It is 6 o'clock according to iPhone. It's not the clock on the wall, so we'll go ahead and get started. We'll begin with our opening ceremonies with an invocation followed by a salute to the flag delivered by Councilman Jansen. Please rise.
Let us pray. Dear and gracious Heavenly Father, we learned that we have no authority until we submit to your authority. Lord, we just ask you to guide us with common thinking, give us strength and wisdom. Lord, I ask you that you look over our first responders as though the servants of God, and that they do not bear the sword in vain. And Lord, we just ask you for these things in your Son's name. Amen.
Amen. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
This meeting is called to order. Madam Clerk, roll call.
Councilmember Golding,
Here.
Councilmember Horn,
Here.
Councilmember Jansen,
Here.
Councilmember Meza,
Here.
Councilmember Sutton,
Here.
Councilmember Wagner,
Here.
Mayor Hoffman.
Here. Moving on to approval of minutes.
I move that we approve the minutes from the regular city council meeting held on April 15th, 2024.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion? All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Announcements. Council announcements? Ms. Golding.
Want to mention, I hope everybody attended the beach's opening parade. It was a great parade. Want to thank Allison and our Parks and Recs department who put a lot of effort into making it a great parade, as well as everybody who participated. Also want to mention that there was a great presentation by the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers and Kevin Bodge about the beach renourishment that's just started here in Jacks Beach. The presentation was done last Wednesday. It was a Beaches Watch presentation, and you can go to beacheswatch.com and see the video there. Very, very good presentation. I would highly recommend you check it out. Also want to thank the mayor and the city manager for the letter that you sent to the governor regarding detailing the problems that we are having with guns, gangs, and drugs at short-term rentals. And just want to update that Senate Bill 280, which is the short-term rental bill, that is not a good bill, has not made it to the governor's desk yet. So there's still an opportunity for anyone who would be willing to send the governor an email and urge him to veto Senate Bill 280 because it does not help communities like Jacksonville Beach deal with the problems that we're having with vacation rentals. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Golding. Mr. Horn.
I have a couple of quick announcements. I wanted to congratulate some new members of the Volunteer Life Saving Corps. They actually just got another class of recruits in, winter of 2024, 5 new lifeguards who are members of the community and looking to go out and volunteer to serve their community. Very proud of them. Liam Turner, Eric Flint, Ben Spinowitz, Ryan Lyden, and Marco Polito. Really proud of their willingness to go out and continue to serve their community. I also wanted to recognize some of our local surfers. The ESA All-Star team, which is coached by Jason Motes, just recently came back from the ESA Southeastern Regionals at Long Beach Beach. They did amazingly well. They all qualified for the East Coast Championships in Cape Hatteras in September, which again, kudos to them. Jacksonville Board Riders Club just won the Florida Board Riders Championship, and they will be going out to California to compete in the National Board Riders Championship in May. The ESA team, we've got Ethan Robertson, Owen Anthony, and Jay Wire, all 13 years old, and then Ava Earl, Maggie Dempsey, Ellie Walsh, and Lily Schroeder, 16 and 17 years old. This is the part that blew me away, was Jackson Lane, Everett Wire, and Hendrick Shaw also competing in the Southeast Regionals, all winning or competing very well in the under 12. One of our young 9-year-olds beat everybody in the 12 and under group at the Southeast Regional days going on to the East Coast Championship. So I'm just super proud of these local surfers, and I figured if I give them some props up here, maybe they'll let me catch a wave or two at the pier. Oh, and I also wanted to mention that it was a Volunteer Life Saving Corps golf tournament recently. well represented by the City of Jacksonville Beach City Council. Both myself, my team, and Councilor Sutton's team won awards. We don't have to go into specifics of what the awards were for, but
I'd like the specifics.
I think we did quite well. Thank you very much.
Congratulations. We have a lot of announcements tonight, and I'm sorry to not see what order everyone turned on their lights, so we're just going to go down the line. Mr. Mesa?
Yes, good evening, everyone. I do want to say opening of the beaches weekend we had it once again. I have 3 favorite times of the year: 4th of July, my birthday, and opening of the beaches weekend. I fell in love with the city, my first experience with that weekend, opening of the beaches, and here I am. That weekend we were busy. I drove around the city. I saw the sandcastle competition. There was a lot of good showing for it. I'm glad it's back. There was 2 fundraisers around the city that were well attended. Eat Brewing had one, and Pepe Salon, who turned 50, celebrated 50 years by doing a fundraiser for 2 Tits Nice, which helps local women who are battling breast cancer. So that was a fun time. I drove around the city. It was beautiful. It was busy. Nothing crazy happened. Obviously, congratulations to those new lifeguard volunteers. Nothing but kudos to them and to anyone who volunteers for any nonprofit organization. I also want to highlight, obviously we had some Airbnb issues a couple weekends ago. I sent an email to our city manager, and he was very proactive to tell me that him and the mayor were already prepping, or have sent a letter to the governor about those issues. So that goes to tell you that we're being proactive with these Airbnbs who are being a problem to the city and to our quality of life. Congrats to my colleagues on winning those tournaments. I hope to hear the specifics later on. And yeah, thank you guys for coming.
Thank you, Mr. Mesa. Mr. Jansen?
Yeah, real quick, it's unfortunate I wasn't able to attend the parade. I had made a previous commitment to chaperone our Beaches Boy Scout Troop 282 to Cumberland Island, so that was a fun adventure on Sunday. I did make it to the Sandcastle contest, which was nice to see that back, and there's a lot of talent in Jacksonville Beach. Some really good castles that were built in that. If you get a chance to look at Quality Cities Magazine, there's a nice article in there this month that kind of showcases all of our hard work that we did in active legislative days in Tallahassee. And my colleague is well represented in the magazine as well as myself. So if you get a chance to check that out.
Anyone else? All right, most of the good ones have been covered, but I will add, we had along with the opening of the beaches festivities, we brought back the Sandcastle contest, which it sounds like it was very well received, and I think this was one of the longest parades, not by length, although there were some sizable gaps in there, but by amount of participants, which was really nice to see. The weather was perfect, and I think we'll continue to kind of regrow that event in the years going forward. There was also a volleyball contest, a skate ramp out on the beach, and a silent disco on Friday on the pier, which is always a lot of fun. Ms. Golding mentioned that we did have, that the beach renourishment has started. We had a press conference out on the beach last Monday, and what's kind of unique, I think, if you've been around here long enough, you've probably been through a cycle or two of beach renourishment, but this one is completely federally funded, where normally there's part from the county, part from the federal government. But because of the damage to our coastline with the storms a couple of years ago, we were able to receive full federal funding. On that note, H-word season is just around the corner, so it's a great time to make sure that you and your household are prepared. The city is pretty much in a constant state of preparation, but we'll be really working in earnest in the next month or so with some of our preparation exercises. We have a countywide exercise, and the Jack's Ready Fest will be held this Friday at the Prime Osborne Convention Center, so if that's something you're interested in learning more about. Just check out Jack's Ready. It's a great app. I encourage you to go ahead and take some time to download it. Let's all remember to silence our cell phones at this moment. We have a busy agenda with a lot of folks. And then we had the USS Washington. George Washington is an aircraft carrier that was in port Last week, early in the week, I was able to go out to reception to welcome them to Jacksonville. They are just passing through, but it was nice to see a carrier in the basin. It was very nostalgic. They're on their way to Yokosuka, Japan, by way of a few ports in South America. So they'll be doing some kind of public relations, diplomatic relations as they go around to their home port of Yokosuka, Japan. Friday, we have the Moonlight movie. It will be The Little Mermaid. I think it's the new Little Mermaid, the live action-ish, as live as you can get with mermaids. So come on out to the Seawalk Pavilion for that event. Oh, and then last week we had Seawalk sessions with Madison Hughes. It was a wonderful event. It's the first Wednesday of the month. The weather was beautiful, and the talent was really incredible. So we've got a lot going on in Jacksonville Beach. Please stay tuned. Follow the social media website and our really awesome newsletter for more about that. Okay, moving on to courtesy of the Florida visitors. We have a couple of cards that are not attached.
Mayor, we did not do approval.
Oh, I'm sorry. Thank you. No, we did approval of the minutes.
I mean, I'm
We
sorry.
didn't do
but
approval of the agenda.
Yeah.
Yeah, thank you. I took my glasses off and didn't put them back on. Can I have a motion to approve the agenda?
I move that we approve the agenda.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Ms. Golding. Any discussion? All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Okay, so we did approval agenda announcements. Now courtesy of the Florida visitors, we'll start with Mr. Gary Paytow. Come on up and give us your name and address, and you will have 3 minutes to address the council.
Council members, Mayor Hoffman, Gary Paytow, 725 Bonner Circle, Jacks Beach. Just want to take a moment and express my frustration with IQ fiber installation. Last week, they came into our community, Ocean Cay, 186 homes, and absolutely destroyed the neighborhood. We made the effort to have a pre-construction meeting with IQ, talked about what needed to be done, how we could help them be more efficient and work effectively through the community. All of that was tossed out the window the day they arrived in the community. We've had over 4 major water line breaks due to their work effort, washing out the underside of driveways, numerous other water line breaks. They lost their compaction missile under the middle of my driveway, which they tried to undermine to see if they could get it back. We've had more than 15% of the community without internet service for up to 3 days because of all the cutting of the lines that they made. There were also numerous sprinkler heads that were destroyed and sprinkler lines as they came through the community, which they then said, oh, no, that's not our problem. That's your landscaper that did that. It has taken a significant amount of city personnel to follow up on all of these issues. At one point, there were more than a dozen public works personnel out there trying to take care of the problems that they created. And on top of that, the resources, the number of trucks, the materials and everything that had to be used were significant. That didn't even include all of the Beaches Energy folks that were also involved in this. I surely hope that we're looking at this and giving invoicing to them for all of the efforts from the public service side that have had to go into this, that we're back charging them for the screw-ups that they're basically creating out there. It's not only it's not something the taxpayers of this community ought to be paying for. It's a private business, and we ought to be able to be compensated for the screw-ups that they're creating out there. AT&T and Comcast are back charging them for all of the efforts that they're having to do. So I would hope that we, as a community, are able to do the same thing and recoup the dollars, as well as get our public service employees back on the job doing the things for the taxpayers of this community. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Paytow. Georgette Dumont.
Good evening, everyone. Georgette Dumont, 507 16th Avenue South, Jackson Beach, Florida, 32250. Good evening. It's been a long time. I was teaching on Monday nights. I've missed you all dearly. Classes are done. Another flock of ospreys have left the nest, and here I am again. I'm speaking on behalf of, UNS Masters of Public Administration Program. May 5th through the 11th is National Public Service Week, and this is the week that we recognize all those who are working in the public sector every day, day in, day out, and often they go unrecognized. So we want to make sure that all public workers get noticed this week. On Thursday night, the UNF Masters of Public Administration Program and UNF's Department of Political Science and Public Administration co-hosted an event awarding our inaugural Public Service Excellence Awards. And those awards went to Carla Miller, the former ethics officer, Kyle Billy, the former city council auditor, and Anna Brochet, the former council president. And we gave for honorary public servant award excellence to Nate Monroe, David Bauerlein, Mark Woods, and Chris Hong for their work in making sure that they kept the JEA issue in the public's eye for over 2 years. So thank you to all the public workers out there. I know you're not supposed to speak to them, but thank you. We appreciate your service.
Thank you, Ms. Dumont. Mabel McQueen.
Mabel McQueen, 637 4th Avenue South, Jacksonville Beach, Florida. I'm the daughter of the late Margaret and Matthew McQueen, the first Afro-American elected city official of Jacksonville Beach, 1991 to 1994, then appointed back to her seat after a liver transplant. January 1998 to December 1998. I bring you greetings from my family. I want to give a great thank you to my illustrious mayor, Ms. Christina Hoffman, to the council for being so kind for the month of February to make it an honorary legal holiday in the city of Jacksonville Beach for my mom, Margaret Ann Matthew McQueen, for Black History Month, for Women's History Month, for the council for being so gracious. Placed a sign on the corner of 2nd Avenue South, and 7th Street, where she placed her home as a single mother of 4 children after being a divorcee, where our home rests right now. I come to give you greetings from the family and thank the city council for all that they have done to make my mom's memory live and stay alive, to the citizens of Jacksonville Beach, and for everyone in the surrounding areas who supported the cause to make the life of the legacy of Margaret Ann Matthew McQueen a legacy in the community. I wanted to come last month because it was held on Easter weekend, where we lost our dear friend, the oldest person in Jacksonville Beach, Miss Eddie Lewis Odom, on Easter, and I was at the dinner when it happened, so I could not make it on that Monday. But I will not let this week, this month, this day pass without thanking you all and the other various beaches who mayors and council people who came and supported the cause. My heart is heavy, but it is filled with so much joy. May the memories of my mother, Margaret Ann Matthew McQueen, live forever with deep gratitude to the citizens in the city of Jacksonville Beach and around the world. Thank you to my city, my great city. Thank you, Mayor Hoffman, and my council constituents. Margaret McQueen was the councilwoman of Seat 1, District 4. Did I say it right? Okay, that was my mom. And I thank you all, and I thank everyone who participated in everything. Thank you, thank you, thank you.
Thank you, Ms. McQueen. That was our final courtesy of the floor visitors. We'll move on to consent agenda.
I move that we approve the consent agenda.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. All in favor, did we do roll call on this one? All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. We have 2 proclamations to go through, and we have visitors to receive one of them, so I'm going to go to the other one first. We were approached by our local American Legion post to recognize American Legion Family Day. Unfortunately, we received the request too late to do it in advance of the Family Day, and they've lost a member of of the American Legion here locally, so they're not able to be here tonight. But I do want to read it, and I would leave this with the clerk's office for them to come and pick up when they can. Whereas the founding fathers of the American Legion established their principles through the creation of the 4 pillars of the American Legion, which are Veterans Affairs and Rehabilitation, National Security, Americanism, and Children and Youth Programs, and whereas the National Executive Committee of the American Legion passed Resolution 7, American Legion Family Day, to be observed annually on the last Saturday of April, and whereas the American Legion, through resolve, urges all members of the American Legion Auxiliary, the American Legion Riders, and the Sons of the American Legion, known collectively as the American Legion family, to open their post-home doors to observe American Legion Family Day with an emphasis on Be the One, and whereas the goal is to educate the members of the community on their new initiative, Be the One, to bring awareness to veteran suicide and destigmatize the courageous decision to seek mental health, and whereas the American Legion family continues to remain steadfast in their commitment to these principles in meeting the ever-expanding needs of their local communities throughout the nation. Now, therefore, I, Christine H. Hoffman, Mayor of the City of Jacksonville Beach, by virtue of the authority vested in me, do hereby proclaim the last Saturday of the month of April as American Legion Family Day. Thank you for that unprompted applause. The next proclamation is with National Safe Boating Week. Whereas for over 100 million Americans, boating continues to be a popular recreational activity. From coast to coast and everywhere in between, people are taking to the water and enjoying time together, boating, sailing, paddling, fishing, and whereas safe boating begins with preparation, the Coast Guard estimates that human error accounts for most boating accidents and that life jackets could prevent nearly 75% of boating fatalities, and whereas through basic safety precautions, carrying life-saving emergency distress and communications equipment, wearing life jackets, attending safe boating courses, participating in free boat safety checks, and staying sober when navigating, we can help ensure boaters on America's coastal, inland, and offshore waters stay safe throughout the season. And whereas National Safe Boating Week is observed to bring attention to the important life-saving trips for recreational boaters so that they can have a safer, more fun experience out on the water throughout the year, and whereas on average 650 people die each year in boating related accidents in the U.S. 75% of those fatalities are caused by drownings. Whereas the vast majority of these accidents are caused by human error or poor judgment and not by the boat, equipment, or environmental factors. And whereas a significant number of boaters who lose their lives by drowning each year would be alive today had they worn their life jackets. Now, therefore, I, Christine Hoffman, Mayor of the City of Jacksonville Beach, Florida, by virtue of the authority vested in me, do hereby proclaim May 18th through 24th, 2024 as National Safe Boating Week, and urge all of those who boat to practice safe boating habits and wear a life jacket at all times while boating. And we have members of our local Coast Guard Auxiliary Flotilla who will receive the proclamation, and we'll do a quick photo walk. Come on up. Rearrange for the There she is. Quite the urge. Okay, moving on, agenda item C. I think Mr. Stefopoulos is going to give us an update on this item.
Just a very brief update. One of our council members has been invited or asked to sit on the Board of Trustees for the Florida Municipal Investment Trust. That's Councilmember Dan Jansen. In order for that to occur, the City Council would need to ratify his appointment to that position. So with that, that item is on here for your consideration tonight.
Thank you. Can we have a motion, please?
I move that we authorize Councilmember Dan Jansen to represent the city of Jacksonville Beach on the Board of Trustees for the Florida Municipal Investment Trust, FMIVT.
I'll second that.
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion? Seeing none, Madam Clerk, roll call.
Councilmember Golding,
Yes.
Councilmember Horn,
Yes.
Councilmember Johnson,
Yes.
Councilmember Mesa,
Yes.
Councilmember Sutton,
Yes.
Councilmember Wagner,
Congratulatory yes.
Mayor Hoffman.
Yes, motion carries. Thank you, Mr. Jansen, for stepping up to serve, and we have several of our board members or council members here serving in additional roles for the Florida League, and we really appreciate that. Thank you. Next item. Item A, under City Manager New Business, which is Energy. Mr. Seeley.
Good evening, Matt Seeley, Electrical Engineering Project Supervisor, Beaches Energy Services. This is pretty simple. FDOT is adding 2 more crosswalks, and this is just for us to allow to proceed with the project and then receive reimbursement for them upon completion of the project. Ultimately, they're effectively adding 4 new dusted all-laser streetlights for those 2 crosswalks.
Thank you, Mr. Seeley. And a motion?
I move that we approve a roadway illumination services agreement with the Florida Department of Transportation for State Road A1A from 7th Avenue North to 3rd Avenue South.
Second.
Motion and a second. Any discussion? Madam Clerk, roll call.
Councilmember Horn,
Yes.
Councilmember Jansen,
Yes.
Councilmember Mesa,
Yes.
Councilmember Sutton,
Yes.
Councilmember Wagner,
Yes.
Councilmember Golding,
Yes.
Mayor Hoffman.
Yes, motion carries. Item B. Mr. Reeker.
Bill Meager, Director of Information Services. We need to replace our interactive voice response system. My recommendation is that instead of having our IVR system here on premise, that we would actually move it into the cloud. This would give us a couple of different things. About 7% of our payments come in through this system. It gives people an option to pay over the phone, either credit card or check. But it also gives us a redundant system should our primary means of taking money in not work or fail for a variety of reasons. We experienced that during the cyber event, and I think this just gives us a little more insurance about our ability to take in payments. Answer any questions.
Thank you. And a motion, please?
I move that we approve an agreement with Selectron to upgrade the IVR server.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any questions or discussions? Mr. Horn.
Any safety concerns you have with putting payment system out into the cloud? Anything that we need to be aware of, or something we might see down the road?
We, in some ways, already have payment systems that are outside of our system here. So this is really no different than that. I don't see an issue with this. These guys do this all day long. They'll just be hosting the servers in their data center versus ours. We've had security check and discussion with them to make sure that their data center meets standard security best practices, and we reviewed all of that, so I have no concerns with that.
Thank you, Mr. Horn. Any other questions? Madam Clerk, roll call.
Councilmember Jansen,
Yes.
Councilmember Mesa,
Yes.
Councilmember Sutton,
Yes.
Councilmember Wagner,
Yes.
Councilmember Golding,
Yes.
Councilmember Horn,
Yes.
Mayor Hoffman.
Yes, motion carries. Item C.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. Jameson Parker, Beaches Energy Services, Substation Relay Supervisor. As a collateral duty, I have responsibility for our transmission system projects. Tonight, we're going to request permission to move forward with making repairs to our transmission system. In 2020, we had an inspection done of all 47 circuit miles for our transmission system. The results of that inspection came back and identified things in a phase 1, phase 2, phase 3 approach based on criticality. We had those results independently corroborated by an engineering consulting firm, and they helped us develop a game plan to address the issues. From there, in late '21, we did a request for qualifications to have a design build contract performed for someone to be awarded the opportunity to come in, do enough engineering to identify the bill of materials, construction services, etc. That was then awarded to Burns and McDonnell. Tonight, we are requesting permission to move forward with the project with a not to exceed guaranteed maximum price of $1.587 million, with a 10% contingency for unforeseen issues. Are there any questions? I have Randy Catelli from Burns and McDonnell here tonight.
Thank you, Mr. Parker. And a motion?
I move that we approve a construction services agreement with Burns and McDonnell for all remaining engineering services, procurement of materials, and construction for a design build contract for transmission service system improvements and repairs for an amount not to exceed $1,745,000 as the contract guaranteed maximum price.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion or questions from council? Hopefully with that, and how many hundreds of pages packet, we're all very well informed on this issue. Madam Clerk, roll call.
Councilmember Meza,
Yes.
Councilmember Sutton,
Yes.
Councilmember Wagner,
Yes.
Councilmember Golding,
Yes.
Councilmember Horn,
Yes.
Councilmember Jansen,
Yes.
Mayor Hoffman.
Yes, motion carries. What was it, Mr. Horn? 160?
500.
550.
550.
500 and, yes.
I did have a question on page 475.
Thank you, Mr. Parker. Thank you, Mr. Wagner. Okay, moving on to resolutions. Ms. Nelson.
Good evening, Karen Nelson, Deputy City Manager. Resolution 2171 will serve to reclassify and/or retitle several positions across city departments. The first one is information services. We are proposing to eliminate the network engineer position and add a second-tier tech support specialist position. That will, number one, be a more efficient use of resources within the department that will serve our growing and changing needs. But also adding the tech support specialist 2 will provide a career path so a person can move from a tech 1 to a tech 2 if through qualified advancement. The next one is in administration, the legal assistant. We are proposing to reclassify by 1 pay grade to account for the additional role that the legal assistant has assumed as ADA coordinator, which is we are required by law to have an ADA coordinator on staff. When we initially brought that role in to the city and developed the job description, we didn't contemplate that person would also serve as ADA coordinator. So we feel the reclassification is appropriate to account for those additional duties. And finally, the administrative support positions that serve across several different city departments. We are proposing to change those job descriptions, change those titles from an office assistant or administrative assistant to an operations support specialist. And that again just better identifies the role that those individuals are playing right now across city departments. We also are proposing to add a tiered structure, a 2-tiered structure within those operations support specialist positions as well to allow for qualified advancement. So I'm here if you have any questions.
Thank you, Ms. Nelson. Madam Clerk, will you read the resolution by title, please?
A resolution of the City of Jacksonville Beach, Florida, amending its position, classification, and pay plan for managerial, professional, and administrative non-union positions, providing for adoption of recitals, adoption of the plan, repeal of prior inconsistent resolutions, severability, and an effective date.
Thank you. And a motion, please?
I move that we adopt resolution number 2171-2024, amending the pay and classification plan for managerial, professional, and administrative non-union positions.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion or questions from council? Mr. Horn.
Sorry, I'm that guy tonight. By department, you have administrative, Beaches Energy, Parks and Rec, police, number of employees. I didn't see anything here about the actual number of employees. Is this per employee or per position?
Position. So the pay and classification plan doesn't define the number of authorized employees in each one of those positions. You can find that information in the budget document, but the pay plan is merely to add the titles and slot them into the appropriate pay grade.
So, and this is the impact for the remainder of the year, so administration, this is roughly a $9,000 pay raise for that position.
For all positions, that's the total impact. We have it broken out by department and then broken out by fund. The total impact is $11,445
For the remainder of the
for the
fiscal
remainder
year,
of this fiscal year
which
for
is
all
double
affected
that.
positions.
So we're doubling that. Okay.
Right.
Okay.
Okay. Any other questions or comments? Madam Clerk, roll call.
Councilmember Sutton?
Yes.
Councilmember Wagner?
Yes.
Councilmember Golding?
Yes.
Councilmember Horn?
Yes.
Councilmember Jansen?
Yes.
Councilmember Meza?
Yes.
Mayor Hoffman?
Yes, motion carries. Item B. Who's got this one?
I've got this one. This next item before you is basically to delegate authority to the Director of Beaches Energy Services. As you just approved back on City Manager New Business Item A, that was an agreement with the FDOT to move forward with improvements on A1A. It's not uncommon for us to get occasionally an agreement from the DOT. They're looking for the signature authority, and we always have to schedule that to come back to council. We're looking for that delegation of signatory authority, but up to the same dollar threshold that exists with the city manager as of today, which is a dollar amount of $25,000, and also allow the city manager to ratify any of the documents that are needed as well. With that, we have Director Putnam here as well, and if you have any questions, we'll try to answer them.
Thank you, Mr. Stefopoulos. Madam Clerk, will you read the resolution by title, please?
A resolution of the City of Jacksonville Beach, Florida, designating the Director of Beaches Energy Services as attorney in fact for Beaches Energy Services, delegating signature authority to the Director of Beaches Energy Services for roadway illumination services agreements and other project-specific documents to complete performance thereof with the Florida Department of Transportation, FDOT, when the one-time services charge to be paid by the FDOT to the city is less than $25,000, and authorizing the city manager to endorse any documentation required by the FDOT that evidences the authority granted herein, providing for adoption of recitals, repeal of prior inconsistent resolutions and council decisions, severability, and an effective date.
Thank you, Madam Clerk, and a motion, please.
I move that we adopt resolution number 2176-2024, designating the Director of Beaches Energy Services as attorney in fact for Beaches Energy Services, delegating signature authority to the Director of Beaches Energy Services for roadway illumination services agreements and other project-specific documents to complete performance thereof with the Florida Department of Transportation, FDOT, when the one-time services charge to be paid by the FDOT to the city is less than $25,000, and authorizing the city manager to endorse any documentation required by the FDOT that evidences the authority granted herein.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Mr. Mesa.
Mike, just a question for clarification on this matter. It's only for $25,000 or less, nothing major. If FDOT wanted to build a tunnel, obviously they will come to us, or, right?
That's correct. Anything in excess of $25,000 would still be required to come in front of the city council. This is only for those projects where the one-time receipt of funds to the city is less than $25,000.
Okay, thank you.
Just imagine the project proposal of FDOT's tunnel in Jax Beach. Any other questions or comments from council? Madam Clerk, roll call.
Councilmember Wagner?
Yes.
Councilmember Golding?
Yes.
Councilmember Horn?
Yes.
Councilmember Jansen?
Yes.
Councilmember Meza?
Yes.
Councilmember Sutton?
Yes.
Mayor Hoffman?
Yes, motion carries. Moving on to ordinances. Do we have any updates from the planning department?
Good evening, Mayor and Council. Heather Ireland, Planning and Development Department. No updates on this particular item, but if you have any questions on second reading, I'll be happy to entertain them.
Thank you. Madam Clerk, will you read the ordinance by title, please?
An ordinance of the City of Jacksonville Beach, Florida, vacating, discontinuing, abandoning, and closing a certain 14-foot wide public alley running in a northerly and southerly direction through that certain property located in the city of Jacksonville Beach, Florida, known as Block 8 Ocean Terrace Subdivision, according to the plat book thereof, recorded in Plat Book 10, page 2 of the current public records of Duval County, Florida, providing for legislative findings, repeal of conflicting ordinances, severability, scrivener's errors, recording and non-codification, and an effective date.
Thank you. This ordinance is before the council for a public hearing and consideration on its second reading. I will now open the public hearing on ordinance number 2024-8211. We do not have any speaker cards on this item, but would anyone from the audience like to speak in favor of or in opposition to this ordinance? Seeing none, the public hearing is closed. Can I have a motion, please?
I move that we adopt ordinance number 2024-8211 on the second reading, vacating a 14-foot wide alley in Ocean Terrace subdivision, Block 8.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion from council? Madam Clerk, roll call.
Councilmember Golding,
Yes.
Councilmember Horn,
Yes.
Councilmember Jansen,
Yes.
Councilmember Meza,
Yes.
Councilmember Sutton,
Yes.
Councilmember Wagner,
Yes.
Mayor Hoffman.
Yes, motion carries. Moving on to item B. Make sure I've got my papers. All right.
Good evening.
Thanks for being ahead of me, Mr. Capoli. Go ahead.
Christian Capoli, City Planner. What you have before you is a rezoning request for several properties located in the downtown commercial core. They're located at 602 North 1st Street, 135, 129, and 123 North 5th Avenue. These properties consist of the existing bar Mangoes, as well as 3 residential style properties. Some of them are used for multifamily, one of them is currently used for office, and those exist to the west of the existing Mangoes. In 2014, the Mangoes property went through a RD rezoning and was the intended location for a server of the bar. I was not here at the time, but obviously server is located in a different spot now. But that RD rezoning was very restrictive, both in what could be there and the site plan. It has prevented Mangoes from doing some of the redevelopment that they were hoping to do on the property, which included upgrading the men's room and adding more outdoor seating areas. They've done as much as they can internally, but part of this request is basically to free them of that previous restriction and allow them to expand the property. In addition to that, the 3 properties to the west are intended to be fully redeveloped into a mixed-use structure. The structure would consist of some retail office space at the first floor, which would actually be smaller than the second floor. The second floor would be restaurant space with outdoor seating. The intent is to allow better traffic flow throughout the project by limiting access on First Street. Currently there's an in and out driveway. We would end up with a one-way in only, so there would be no traffic exiting onto First Street, which is predominantly a pedestrian-oriented street. In addition to that, they intend to do a valet system whereby they'll have a drop-off and pickup location basically underneath the second story of the building. The application is basically recommending that all the uses allowed in the CBD currently would be permitted uses and would not require the applicant to go back before the Planning Commission for additional conditional approvals. Obviously the RD zoning would be the only way they could go and change that in the future. In conjunction with that, there are a list of prohibited uses in CBD, and they're looking to carry those forward as well. So those are things that are not really compatible with the downtown core commercial area. The application was reviewed by the CRA coordinator, and she found that the redevelopment plan was consistent, or the proposed application was consistent with the redevelopment plan for the downtown CRA. Additionally, it was brought before the CRA board on April 22nd, and the CRA recommended approval of the application. Later that evening, on the 22nd of April, it went before the Planning Commission, and they also recommended approval. We do have the applicant here, and I'm happy to answer any questions.
Thank you, Mr. Woolley. Madam Clerk, will you read the ordinance by title?
An ordinance of the City of Jacksonville Beach, Florida, establishing a redevelopment district, RD zoning district, within the City of Jacksonville Beach, Florida, as provided under Chapter 34 of the Code of Ordinances of said city, providing for repeal of conflicting ordinances, severability, and an effective date.
This ordinance to amend the RD zoning regulations of a property is before the council for public hearing and consideration on its first reading. Under the laws of the state of Florida, an application to amend the zoning regulations or a map governing a specific property or development site is handled as a quasi-judicial proceeding. A quasi-judicial proceeding means that the city council is now functioning in a manner similar to a court, with the mayor and council sitting as impartial decision makers, hearing testimony and questioning presenters who are to provide substantial and competent evidence to support their side of the issue. It is the duty of the council to arrive at sound decisions regarding the use of property within the city. This includes receiving citizen input regarding the proposed use on the neighborhood, especially where the input is fact-based and not a simple expression of opinion. It is the applicant's burden to demonstrate that their application is consistent with the Land Development Code and the comprehensive plan. If the applicant is successful in showing consistency, then it is up to the local government to produce competent, substantial evidence of record that the application should be denied. The council's decision on a zoning amendment application is based on the criteria set forth in section 34-211 of the Land Development Code. Each member of the council has been provided a copy of the criteria. In addition, the council has received a copy of the application, the staff report, and Planning Commission and Community Redevelopment Agency recommendations on this RD zoning amendment request. I will now open the public hearing on ordinance number 2024-8213. We already had the staff presentation. Would the applicant like to make a presentation? Welcome to Jacksonville Beach Council meeting.
Thank you, Mayor. I'm Wyman Duggan with Rogers Towers, 1301 Wood Place Boulevard, Suite 1500 downtown. You have received your expert staff report recommending approval in your local planning agency, and the CRA have both heard this application and recommended approval, so I'll just stand by your expert analysis. I will say, I believe Mr. Saig, who's the applicant, owner, developer, is here, and I believe he sent to each of you, I hope you received an email with like an animated aerial flyby of the proposed project. I don't know, I sent it to your staff as well, so we can provide that before the next meeting. But it's an animated, as I said, production that shows what the new building will look like. So otherwise, we'll stand by for any questions. Thank you.
Thank you. Applicants. We will now open the floor for testimony from the public. If you want to be heard on this application and have filled out a speaker card, please step up, state your name and address before providing your comment, which can include whether you are for or against the application. Before closing the public hearing, you can open up, I'm not supposed to read that part, you can open up the floor to comments from anyone who did not complete a speaker card. We'll put that in parentheses next time. We do have one speaker card, so we will start with Georgette Dumont.
Georgette Dumont, 507, 16th Avenue South, Texas Forward, 3250. Got to do it quick because she gets the thing before you get your address in. I'm not opposed to the application. I think that it could be good. I am concerned about a couple of the issues, a couple of the pieces in the application. For the content, I'd like to see you all amend the application to remove the grandfathering in of mangoes. So if it's closed for more than 6 months, which a bathroom and an extended deck should enclose it for more than 6 months. In the packet as it sits, it would not lose its liquor license. By current code, you lose your you lose your grandfathering in if you are closed for more than 6 months. And they're asking to not lose that grandfathering in, so I'd ask you to remove that from the application. The second piece that I would ask you to remove from the application is keep at least one of the conditional approvals for the redevelopment zone. And that one is number 8 on page 9, and that would be having to go for an additional conditional use for wanting to operate a bar in that area. I understand about the bar licenses and all. the plans that I've seen, it looks as though Mango's will be a separate building from the other two. My concern is that somehow they can be connected in the future, and as we have seen with some establishments already in downtown Jacks Beach, you have bars sharing their liquor licenses, so more bars can open up in an adjacent building. So I'd like to find a way to make sure that that doesn't happen. So it's somehow keeping Mango's separate from the other developments. And then finally, just a couple concerns with process. Both the CRA and the Planning Commission heard this on the same day, one earlier in the afternoon than the others. It did not give the Planning Commission a chance to hear what the CRA said. The CRA also, and it's noted in your packet, the CRA had a condition, they suggested a condition on First Street, making sure that the wording makes sure that pedestrians and bicyclists can safely move in front of the property. So please note that condition, just that the Planning Commission didn't know what the CRA had said. So just a couple suggestions. And for competent and substantial evidence, I was on the Planning Commission for over 6 years and former counsel. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Dumont. Would anyone else like to speak in favor of or in opposition to this proposal? Seeing none, the public hearing is closed. Would the applicant like to respond to any comments from the audience?
Thank you for the opportunity to respond. There was some discussion at the Planning Commission, another member of the public spoke about the process issues. Your attorney, your counsel went through all those on the record to clarify that the proper procedure was followed, so I just want to put that on the record again. Thank you.
Thank you. Before requesting a motion on this ordinance, beginning with myself, each of the members is requested to indicate for the record whether the member has had any ex parte communications on the matter, and if so, disclose the names of persons and the substance of the communications regarding this application. An ex parte communication refers to any meeting or discussion with a person or citizen who may have an interest in this decision which occurred outside of the public hearing process. Written ex parte communications, whether sent to one member or all members, do not have to be disclosed on the record, but must be made part of the record by sending or forwarding them to the city clerk. I'll begin. I received several emails on this item from Mr. David Smith, as well as one email from the applicant, Mr. Greg Saig. Mr. Sutton?
Emails from Mr. Smith.
Mr. Horn?
Emails from Mr. Smith.
Emails from Mr. Smith.
Mr. Rocky?
Emails from Mr. Smith.
Emails from Mr. Smith.
Emails from Mr. Smith, and I had a conversation with Wyman Duggan, asking him some questions for clarification regarding the project, the application.
Thank you. Before opening the floor for discussion or questions by the council, please be reminded that our decision will be based on the criteria set forth in the Land Development Code, and the council is required to approve a clear statement of findings of fact stating the basis upon which such facts were determined and the decision was made. I'm sorry, the motion should have been read before that. Go ahead.
I move that we approve ordinance number 2024-8213 on the first reading, approving the rezoning for property located at 602 North First Street and 135, 129, and 123 North Fifth Avenue to redevelopment district RD, and schedule a second reading for May 20th, 2024.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Cut and paste the statement that I read earlier into this moment. We'll open the floor for discussion by council members. Mr. Horn.
Getting some clarification in regards to the comment Ms. Dumont had about the liquor license. Okay, is that if it's closed for more than 6 months, the license is revoked?
Not specifically.
I didn't follow it, so.
Sure. We have a distance requirement for bars between each bar. And in downtown, a majority of the liquor licenses that are tied to those bars are less than that 500 feet. So in our code currently, if you have a non-conforming use, which is a use that's been there legally but no longer meets the requirements of the code, if that ceases for a 6-month period, then it would lose its nonconformity, which means at that point, the bar would have to be 500 feet from the other establishments. So in essence, they don't lose their liquor license, but they lose their ability to be where they are. And they would have to move that license to another location where that would be 500 feet from other bars. So they're basically asking to keep that as a nonconformity going forward.
And so, what's out there? So, I mean, I guess the concern is that, I understand that maybe there's a concern about, I'm assuming build time is longer than 6 months. Maybe, yeah, maybe.
So all this, thank you. What's being constructed is a men's room on the north side of the building, and then an additional outdoor patio around the south and east side of the building. I would assume that would take less than 6 months, but Mr. Stagg is here. He can opine as well if you would like to hear from him. I would say to your issue, this bar has been here for decades. I think any other bars around it that have now made it less than 500 feet came after Mango's was there.
Yeah, and I mean, I think our goal is to try and redevelop the downtown. I'd like to see another restaurant there. We already currently have a bar that is, I mean, it's a good bar, but I would like to see it updated. I'd like to drink beer there. Question for Mr. Wolf. 2014, it was rezoned to RD from what?
From Central Business District.
Okay.
Again, the intent was to make a very specific site plan for a new structure that would have been the sofa bar.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Thank you.
Sure.
Mr. Mesa?
Question, piggybacking on Councilmember Horn, so if we were to make an amendment to where if it prolongs longer than 6 months, they will lose their grandfather clause, right?
Mhm.
That means they would have to move the liquor license somewhere, correct?
Yes.
We definitely want to keep the licenses here instead of having to go somewhere near a neighborhood. Okay. I'm thinking, thank you.
Ms. Golding?
Follow up to this same discussion. So Ms. Dumont brought up a good point, and I know that Mango's has been here a long time, but what we're doing with this RD rezoning will put this, will allow this to be, that property to have a bar forever, correct?
I mean, they wouldn't lose their grandfathering if they closed for renovation or something like that. So in essence, yeah, they could be there forever.
Well, and if Mango's decided to go away, somebody could still put another bar there.
Provided they were able to get a license from one of the 14 that we have here. Yeah, I mean, it's conceivable.
I believe, I talked to Mr. Duggan about this, and I understand the purpose for their asking for this, because Mango's is non-conforming, and they want to make it conforming, but I have concerns about the fact that this allows this property to have a bar forever. And to Mr. Horn's point, I think we've all discussed that we want to see our downtown be a place that our residents want to go, which means not everything should be a bar in the downtown area. I would be willing to make a motion that we, or make an amendment, request an amendment that we remove the exception for the distance requirement in item number 8 of the application.
Second.
We have a motion and a second to amend the item. Is there any discussion on the amendment? Madam Clerk, roll call.
Can I have 1 second to do something?
Mr. Horn?
Can I have 1 second to look at something before we have a roll call? I just want to look at this real quick.
Yes.
If you can give me just a moment. What page is that on? I just had it.
That's on page 9 of the application, of the narrative, sorry.
Correct. I just ran through it and So clarification, your amendment is that we remove this such that 6 months? No, not? I'm sorry, that's why I'm trying to get some clarification here. It's the opposite.
This is just removed, they had put in the application that they wanted to exempt. Our code currently requires that bars be 500 feet from other bars. And so they wanted to put in, they have in here that this RD rezoning does not have to comply with that requirement, with the distance requirement. So it's exempting that distance requirement. So I'm proposing that we remove the distance requirement, so that still, it's still non-conforming, but if somebody decides to remove the property, they would have to get, they'd have to get permission to put a bar there, but if the distance requirement isn't met, they can't put a bar there.
Okay. Thank you. That's, I was missing a part of that.
Does planning staff have any comments on this amendment?
I haven't done the analysis, but it's possible that the other half of the property could be 500 feet away. So I don't know if this particular provision would prevent a bar from being there. The design and layout and location of the buildings is obviously controlled by the RD, so much like the situation they're in now. If they did want to redevelop in a different manner, they'd have to come back to you guys to ask for that. And just in response to the statement about them expanding, currently the way the property is laid out in this site plan allows them to meet the parking requirements. Any additional square footage they add, they have to account for, so that's kind of a disincentive for them because they would have to buy their way out of that parking. So I don't expect there to be any changes, but again, they'd have to come back before you for that. So.
Mr. Wagner.
So I just wanted to,
I'm going to do that at least once a meeting. So I just wanted to clarify, so is that basically the same thing as the elimination, and I probably should have stated this, is the proposed modification to the language basically the same thing as removing of the grandfather clause, grandfathering provision?
They sound similar.
The other new guy.
I'm going to do that responsibly. They sound similar, but I want to defer to the planning staff who works with this every day. I don't want to not have looked at this in detail before. I don't want to give a wrong answer. And I of course, can also research this prior to the second hearing as needed, but I think, sorry, I put you on the spot.
Yeah, no, that's fine.
They deal with this code every day, so I want to defer them at this point in time.
Thank you.
And I can also come back with more info 2 weeks from tonight.
In essence, removing this particular language from the proposal would simply put them in the status that they're in now, in which case, if they cease operation for 6 months. Now, they could do these repairs and expansions while potentially being open. Some of it may not impact their business, but, and that 6 months is specifically spelled out in the code, so there are some things that wouldn't impact that, but in essence, without this provision, they would just remain as they are as a nonconformity.
Mr. Mesa? Oh, I'm sorry, Mr. Wagner.
No, so I was going to ask, if the modification can be easily done within the 6 months, then I don't know what the value is of the change.
I mean, there could be, some sort of catastrophic damage to the building at some point, or there could be a reason that they have to close for a period of time that exceeds 6 months.
Oh, like a hurricane or?
That may fall under a natural disaster, but there could be a fire or something like that.
Just trying to get supplies in the current climate. Mr. Mason?
I just want to make sure that I'm getting this correct and we are making the right decision. Lots at stake. If we were to vote for Councilmember's amendment of removing this clause, that means if the owner was to ever sell the property and whoever buys it, they wouldn't be grandfathered in. As long as the business doesn't stay closed for 6 months.
So, it's kind of a two-part answer. Currently, to have a bar downtown, you have to have conditional use. Conditional uses aren't transferable. Under this proposal, it would be a permanent use, so they wouldn't have that mechanism that they'd have to go through. So if they sold the business in its entirety, and the existing structure and the liquor license and all that, and maintained operation, it wouldn't impact their non-conforming. If for some reason that the business itself closed, or they, the business was vacant for 6 months or something like that, then yes, they would potentially lose that non-conforming status.
And the next question is, so let's say they lose the non-conforming, and let's say they wanted to rebuild the structure and move the door away from, I guess, from the next location. The next location is what, Lynch's Beef Pizza?
I think so. It had
Casa Marina, is Casa Marina counted as, or is it?
No, it's their
This
restaurant.
is- Okay,
Yeah, the hotel.
all right. Okay.
Any other comments on the amendment? Madam Clerk, roll call.
Councilmember Horn,
Yes.
Councilmember Jansen,
No.
Councilmember Meza,
No.
Councilmember Sutton,
Yes.
Councilmember Wagner,
No.
Councilmember Golding,
Yes.
Mayor Hoffman.
No. Amendment fails. Back to the original motion. Any questions or comments remaining from council? Ms. Golden?
Okay, so the CRA recommended that the project use enhanced pedestrian elements on the First Street side of the property. So I believe we should make a motion to amend the application to use enhanced pedestrian elements on the First Street side of the property.
Are you making that motion, or do you believe we should? Okay. Is there a second?
Second.
Did I hear a second?
Second.
We have a motion and a second on an amendment. Any questions or comments? Mr. Mesa?
Question for the applicant in this amendment. Obviously, pedestrian bicyclists are all over First Street. I know Mangles has a ton of bicycle parking lot or spots. What enhancements are they able to do if we were to make this amendment?
Thank you very much for this opportunity, because when that was proposed at the CRA, it was at the end of the discussion as somewhat of a kind of an afterthought. There was no discussion around what that would entail. There had been some extended discussion around, I remember the CRA had some serious concerns, mostly because she thought certain aspects of the plan had been adopted into your comprehensive plan, which it had not been. And when she learned that, she kind of withdrew a lot of her concerns, but then at the end kind of put that out there. But there was no discussion around standards for that, substantial competent evidence as to why it's required under your CRA, or what it might consist of. So, it's out there, and I understand why it was brought up, but it's completely nebulous as to what that might be. Now, I'm not saying my client is unwilling to do something, but we don't really, that's not much to go off of.
I like the amendment idea, and I'm all about the enhancement of pedestrian and bicycle safety. I want to look more into this. Obviously, this is the first reading. Is there a way, I guess, the client and maybe city can figure out what is it that the enhancement is talking about? Because, I think this is something to look at, and I think if we could either vote no on the amendment for now, and then maybe bring it back up on the second reading, because I do want to look into, because I saw that on the comment from the CRA, so I want to look into that and make sure that at least we look into it, and what is it that we're talking about, what type of enhancement?
Sure, thank you. We'd be happy to work with the staff on that.
Thank you, Mr. Simmons. Mr. Horn?
I agree that, yes, any kind of enhancements on First Street are great. I think that amendment is far too vague to really give any guidance or for us for me to support. Just my thoughts.
Mr. Jansen?
Yeah, just going to echo the same. I'd like to know what, at least from the city's standpoint, what these enhancements would be. So I think it needs to be more defined before we move on that.
Ms. Golden?
I would just like to say that I believe that it was intended to be broad so that the property owner would not be like boxed in that you have to do this or this or this, but rather just to ask the property owner to make sure that they provide enhanced, pedestrian elements. So could be bicycle racks, could be, other things, but I mean, I think it's because the intent is to support pedestrian activity, and there is a lot of pedestrian activity along First Street. So my hope would be that we leave it open, we leave it broad, so that the owner could do whatever they feel would be possible that they could do.
Mr. Horn?
And as this is a benefit, obviously, I'm assuming that the applicant's happy to do what they can for First Street and that area and making it pedestrian friendly. Can you repeat the amendment again to me though, just so I can hear it again? Or do we need to adjust the amendment?
So
Or do you hear what your statement was again?
So the CRA asked that the project use enhanced pedestrian elements on the First Street side of the property.
Mr. Mason?
Ms. Gilden, I agree. If you were the property owner, what enhancements would you think of having there? I'm all about the enhancement. I just want to make sure we're doing the correct thing here.
Well, like I said before, it could be bicycle racks, but I don't know, there could be other things that they could do that would make it more pedestrian friendly.
Seems like Mr. Duggan might have a thought.
Thank you, I appreciate it. So the plans have new bicycle racks and new landscaping. That's already incorporated into the plans of what we're trying to do. So I think perhaps between now and the next meeting, we can specify that for you all and writing as to what we're already planning to do. It may be that would suffice. I mean, again, the CRA did not seem to be familiar with that level of detail of the plans when that discussion came up right at the end. And there was no reference to some provision of the CRA plans. Like, they didn't reference, hey, pursuant to this goal or policy or objective of the CRA plan, please do more enhanced pedestrian activity. They just kind of put that out there. So we're happy to work with staff. We're happy to provide specific detail to all of you between now and the next meeting. This is what we're already planning to do.
Thank you, and I appreciate the fact that bike racks are already there. I parked my bike at Mango's for the opening of the Beaches Parade last weekend. But when I think about pedestrian enhancements, bike racks are bike rider enhancements, not necessarily pedestrian enhancements. So I think this needs a little more thought and discussion. Mr. Wagner?
Kind of very similar, Your Honor, to your comments. The concern I have, I'm a big fan of making First Street safer, making it a funner place. I'm born and raised here. I've been up and down that place more than I care to admit. The concern I have is putting something out there where somebody doesn't know when they're successful at our requirements to them. And so I do really, to kind of piggyback off Councilor Horn, maybe if we could set up a process so that there's some time for folks to kind of think through what might be a nice solution. Because I really don't want to put somebody in a position where we haven't provided the appropriate guidance and all they can do is they don't know what they've done is correct. And so thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Wagner. No other lights on the board. We will vote on the second amendment offered by Ms. Golding regarding pedestrian enhancements. Madam Clerk, roll call.
Councilmember Jansen?
No.
Councilmember Meza?
No.
Councilmember Sutton?
Yes.
Councilmember Wagner?
No.
Councilmember Golding?
Yes.
Councilmember Horn?
No.
Mayor Hoffman?
No, amendment fails. Back to the original motion, Ms. Golding.
Okay, this is another item that I spoke with Mr. Duggan about. In the application, there's discussion about valet that will be used for this development. And there was also mention about the adjacent public parking spaces to the property. I spoke with Mr. Duggan and he talked with the client and with his client because I feel that it's important that the valet not use the public parking spaces because they're public parking spaces. So for that reason, I can let Mr. Duggan respond to this, but I believe that the applicant would be willing to support that condition. Is that correct? If we were to make that condition.
Yes, we would agree to a condition that the valet could not utilize the public parking spaces for the purposes of their valet parking. Yes.
Then I make a motion to amend the application to prohibit the valet from using the public parking spaces.
Second.
We have a motion in 4 seconds. Any discussion from council? Madam Clerk, roll call on the third amendment.
Councilmember Meza?
Yes.
Councilmember Sutton?
Yes.
Councilmember Wagner?
No.
Councilmember Golding?
Yes?
Councilmember Horn?
Yes.
Councilmember Jansen?
Yes.
Mayor Hoffman?
Yes, amendment passes. Back to the original motion. Ms. Bolton.
I believe everybody got Mr. Smith's communications, and one of the things that he brought up is that currently our LDC requires that outdoor restaurants and bars have buffering, and let's see, it mentions that buffering must be provided around outdoor restaurant or bar areas when immediately adjacent to residential uses. And he also provided us a definition from our own land development code. And now, Mr. Smith's property is across the street. And adjacent landowner definition says means an owner of land sharing a boundary with another parcel of land for purposes of the LDC, an intervening road, right-of-way, easement, or canal shall not destroy the adjacency of the two parcels. When I was going through the application, in his comments, I'm sensitive to the fact that there are residential properties in the area. So I think it would be important that buffering be required for the outdoor restaurant and bar area of this development. That being said, that is an exception, I believe, that's included in item number 7. Let's see, which is, yes, 34-407. Anyway, I would like to make a motion that we amend the application to require the buffering as outlined in our land development code.
We have a motion. Is there a second?
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion on the 4th Amendment requiring buffering? Mr. Duggan, would you like to speak to this?
Thank you, Mayor. Yes, ma'am. So, Mr. Smith is not the entity authorized or responsible for interpreting the land development code. That's your expert staff. And in their review of the project, they did not comment that code provision is implicated here by our development, nor did the CRA, nor did the Planning Commission. So those are your experts on land development code issues, not Mr. Smith. So I would say that is There's no competent substantial evidence in the record warranting the application of that code provision to the proposed plan because none of your staff, or none of your experts have said that it's implicated. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Rogan. Ms. Golden?
Mr. Popley or Ms. Ireland, could you respond to that, please?
Yes, ma'am, happy to. Our interpretation of that subsection E in 34407 is that it does not apply. The intent of that part of the code, which some of you may remember when we added that, was property immediately adjacent, and we put that in there on purpose, meaning they share a property boundary, which in this case they do not. It's also not strictly a residential property, it's mixed-use residential commercial. So we would not apply those standards in this case.
Thank you, Ms. Ireland. Ms. Golden, your light's still on. Do you have any further? Okay, we will, any other comments from council on the Fourth Amendment regarding buffering? Madam Clerk, roll call.
Councilmember Sutton?
Yes.
Councilmember Wagner?
Yes.
Councilmember Golding?
Yes.
Councilmember Horn?
No.
Councilmember Jansen?
No.
Councilmember Meza?
No.
Mayor Hoffman?
No, amendment fails. Back to the original amendment, I'm sorry, the original item. Ms. Golden. All right.
I think this is the last one, I promise. So going back to the original discussion about the bar, and my statement before about, okay, if something happens and they decide to sell the building or whatever, if, you know, the liquor license is totally separate from the property. So my feeling is this, that should not always be a bar, just because our zoning says it can be a bar, because right now it's non-conforming. It can remain non-conforming, and it can continue to operate as non-conforming. So I would suggest that we amend the application to make the bar, lounge, nightclub conditional, as opposed to permitted.
Are you offering that as an amendment?
That's my amendment.
Is there a second?
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion on this amendment?
Thank you, Madam Mayor, I appreciate it. I did have a discussion with Councilmember Golding about this issue, although it was slightly different. She proposed that the application be amended to stipulate that there may only be a single bar on the entire property because of some concern, which I think is a valid concern, that in addition to Mango's, the other end could somehow be ultimately redeveloped into a bar. We are happy to agree to that condition, that there only ever be one bar on the property that's the subject of the RD, which is slightly different than what she's proposed, but we're willing to agree to the previous discussion that she had, that we had. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Golden.
Yeah, I just want to clarify that, to the concerns that Ms. Dumont raised, which I also have because we have bars here that are sharing licenses and that sort of thing. I just feel that it's important that if we make it conditional, they can still operate as a bar. It just means that if anything changes, that they'd have to get approval for a bar to be on that property. So I just wanted to clarify that.
Any other questions, or Mr. Horn?
Heather, is that, or Christian, somebody, is that possible for that to happen? Is that just like suddenly something's just, we're suddenly gonna have, don't wanna be one big bar, it'll stop? Or if we approve this and it suddenly stops being a restaurant? Because I mean, what we have there is one bar currently. And if we're gonna have one bar, I mean, if we have one bar, and we're gonna have one bar after this redevelopment, plus retail, plus restaurant, plus other things, I just wanna make sure that that's not something that can magically happen.
No, and I think there's two kind of control mechanisms in place. One, a full standalone bar requires a quota license, which there are a limited number in the city, and they're all taken up, including Mango. So, in that sense, you can have a second bar unless there was some special arrangement by it being attached. The design of the buildings is set by the site plan, which is part of the RD. So for them to expand or come back at a later date to make that one giant bar, they have to go back through council. So there is a control mechanism there as well. I think your worst case scenario would be they decided to come back and basically flip the two. But there's nothing that they could do at this point to get another liquor license or expand the buildings to connect without coming back to you guys.
Ms. Golding? Mr. Buckley? But couldn't they, if they were, I mean, because if they were to get a liquor license from somewhere else, who knows where, if we approve the application as it is written, they could put another bar on the property somewhere, because that exception for 500 feet is accepted, and they don't have to get approval.
Well, we have a cap on the total number of quota licenses in the city. So they're currently all taken up. So,
but I'm just saying,
if you
yeah.
lost the bar, again, they would have to be 500 feet from each other.
No, they wouldn't, because this application is accepting that. It's saying that there can't be a bar, or that the 500-foot requirement is not required. Number 8 says that.
I would say if that's really the concern, your best option would probably be to condition it to that specific structure or that specific entity, or that there couldn't be two on the property at one time. If that's...
In addition, we wouldn't need code for parking. Right now, under the RD site plan that you're going to approve, we meet code. If we had another bar, it would generate a higher parking demand, and the plan would be out of compliance. So presumably, when it went in for a permit approval, it would be denied because there isn't enough parking for another bar.
Mr. Wagner?
A question for clarification. So if, in the scenario that we're discussing, if it were to play out and there would be a second bar put onto that same space, wouldn't that second bar, though, have the 500 feet requirement? Because it's not grandfathered in.
Well, currently, yeah. If the...
So the scenario in which we're playing out can't happen because the second location would have the 500 feet.
I don't have the language in front of me from the application. I
But it's
gather
not
from the way it's written, it may not be clear that that would be the case. It may remove that for both locations.
Any other comments or questions? I understand what you're going for. Seems like there's a lot of unanswered questions on this one that maybe we need sometime in the next 2 weeks to drill down into, if this amendment does not pass, that we maybe take some time in the next couple of weeks to figure out what this should look like to get the results that we want. Ms. Golding, did you have another comment?
Well, so I could withdraw my amendment, correct?
Sure. Can you?
You can withdraw.
Speak first, pass it there.
Under Robert's Rules of Order, we just need to make sure there's no objection to that. Doesn't need a formal motion as long as there's no indication of objection. And then, of course, you can make another motion if you want it, or however you want to proceed. Is that what you'd like to do at this time?
No. Well, because I want to hear from Ms. Ireland first.
Thank you, Councilwoman Golding. If I could just jump on in. The way that I interpret the application, if you look at our zoning code and most of the applications you'll see for rezonings, it'll list permitted uses as business establishments, restaurants, offices. They're always plural. In this application, they've said a bar, nightclub, yada yada, that the code says. So I think what might make sense is kind of where you were going to condition it that there's only one bar on the property at any given time. Again, I know the concern came up to connect them, like we do have some bars connected, but That's a state thing that they allow, but they have to be physically connected to be able to share that liquor license. So unless they amend their site plan, like Mr. Capoli said, to change the configuration of the buildings to actually attach the existing Mangoes to the new structure they plan to build, I don't see any way that they would be able to do that.
Mr. Mesa?
I was just gonna make a comment. The only reason I would vote no is not because I'm against it, is I just want more time for us to look into it, like the other amendment with the pedestrian enhancement. That's all.
Mr. Wagner?
Oh, I'm sorry.
Ms. Golden?
Well, my concern that I think seems to be missed is that what I said earlier is if they were to sell that parcel that Mangoes is on, and they don't sell the liquor license with it, it could still be a bar because this application says so. Correct? Is that correct?
I'll take a stab at that, thank you. So I'm not sure if they're selling Mangoes, they would have no utility unless someone were buying it as a bar, so they'd be selling the liquor license with the bar, right? And then the balance of the property is still governed by, even though they're under separate ownership now, actually, it's two separate ownership entities for the two halves. You have two applicants here. But the balance of the property is still going to be controlled by the written description and the site plan. And they still have to meet code for parking. We are happy to agree that there will only be one bar and that the remainder will be a 4COP legitimate restaurant alcohol license that should address the problem, the concern.
Okay, then I'll withdraw my motion and make another motion that we amend it to clarify that there is only one bar permitted in this RD rezoning. And that's my motion.
There is a motion to amend. Is there a second?
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion by council? Seeing none, Madam Clerk, roll call.
Can I clarify who seconded that?
Mr. Sutton, I believe?
Councilmember Golding?
Yes.
Councilmember Horn?
Yes.
Councilmember Jansen?
No.
Councilmember Meza?
Yes.
Councilmember Sutton?
Yes.
Councilmember Wagner?
No.
Mayor Hoffman?
Yes, motion carries. Back to the original item. Any other discussion from council? Thank you all for the robust discussion. We will be hearing this for our second reading in 2 weeks. Should it pass, Madam Clerk, roll call.
Councilmember Horn?
Yes.
Councilmember Jansen?
Yes.
Councilmember Meza?
Yes.
Councilmember Sutton?
Yes.
Councilmember Wagner?
Yes.
Councilmember Golding?
Yes.
Mayor Hoffman?
Yes, motion carries. Now I'll say we will hear this item again in 2 weeks. Okay, moving on to item C, comprehensive plan. We have a report from staff.
So I have to switch gears with all my paperwork here. Okay. Good evening again, Mayor and Council. Heather Ireland, Planning and Development Director. We have in front of you tonight the full draft of the 2050 Comprehensive Plan for your review and consideration. I believe all of you except Councilman Wagner were able to attend our numerous workshops to discuss the update to the comp plan and the land development code. We started in 2002 with multiple workshops for the community, businesses, council, and our board members. We continued those workshops into 2023, and in January of 2024, you may remember we presented the draft to everybody. We took comments at 2 workshops from our board members and from council. We also kept live the comment section of the project website so that Kinley Horn, our consultant, could continue to collect comments from the community and residents and business owners. And we are now at the point where we are ready to transmit it to the state of Florida, reviewing agencies for their consideration. And I want to go into a whole lot of detail because I know we've talked about a lot of different topics on a lot of different occasions. I am going to turn it over to Blair and Mark with Kinley Horn to just talk about kind of where we are in the process, and then we're happy to take any questions that you guys have. Blair Knight and Kinley Horn, we're finally here. We're finally here. So I just wanted to briefly update y'all. We're asking for the adoption. I have a hard copy if you need it, let me know. So where are we in the project timeline? We're getting close. We're towards the end in the green. The next step, we're gonna, if tonight goes forward, the state will review, and then while all of that is happening, we're working on the land development code. We've been working on it for a long time. Staff and Kinley Horn are going to have weekly calls to go over everything and all the changes, and so we're going to be working on the land development code, and we'll have workshops again for that. And then I just wanted to quickly go, I've got a lot of animations here, quickly go through what we've done. So like Heather said, we kicked off in 2022, so we've been doing this for a while. We had many workshops. We had citizens workshops, we had board workshops, we had business owner workshops, workshops with city council, staff. We also had really kind of specific topic workshops that we really wanted to nail down last year. And then we also had a second round of workshops after the first round of workshops. So we've had plenty of workshops talking about all the changes, and we're finally here. So if you guys have any questions, I'm here, but really just wanted to go over, we have a broad overview of all the changes that we made. And remember, this was not a complete rewrite. This was an update. So we were updating a lot of references, making sure it made sense for the city of Jacksonville Beach. And you know, some of the kind of normal things that you have, like definitions for land uses, we added all of that. And so I'm not going to belabor the point, we've been here. I will say that we did receive a couple emails from a citizen about the coastal high hazard area. And we had FEMA's definition, and we also had state statutes definition in the comp plan. We made sure that we made that consistent and used state statutes definition. And then there was also some questions about the data for the coastal high hazard area map. And we received that data from the North Florida Regional Council, and that's the same data that the city of Jacksonville uses. So just wanted to point that out. And a lot of the things we've talked about, but since we last saw y'all, that was kind of the major change. And then I am here for questions, if you have any.
Stand by for questions. No, you don't have to stand. Madam Clerk, will you read the ordinance by title, please?
An ordinance of the City of Jacksonville Beach, Florida, transmitting proposed amendments to the 2030 Comprehensive Plan, and also transmitting a new map series and data and analysis to the State of Florida's various agencies for review and comment, providing for adoption of said amendments and adopting a 2050 Comprehensive Plan with visions, intents, and strategies upon receipt of said comments and completion of the state review process, providing directions to the Planning and Development Department, providing for purpose and intent, providing for repeal of conflicting ordinances, severability, Scrivener's errors, and an effective date.
Thank you. This ordinance for the amendment to the text of the 2030 Comprehensive Plan is before the Council for a public hearing and adoption on its first reading. Under the laws of the state of Florida, an ordinance which changes the text of any element of the city's 2030 Comprehensive Plan is a quasi-legislative proceeding. A quasi-legislative proceeding means that a governing body is acting in its rulemaking capacity. It is the duty of the Council to arrive at sound decisions regarding proposed changes to the text of the adopted 2030 Comprehensive Plan. This includes receiving citizen input regarding any proposed text change. The application has been reviewed by staff and the Planning Commission for consistency with other portions of the comprehensive plan. The council may hear from all interested parties in the legislative determination of an amendment to the text of the city's 2030 comprehensive plan. The council's decision on a comprehensive plan amendment is based on the criteria set forth in section 34-182 of the Land Development Code. Each member of the council has been provided a copy of the criteria. I will now open the public hearing on ordinance number 2024-8214. We have already heard from staff. I don't think I had any speaker cards on this one. Would anyone in the audience like to speak in favor or against this proposal? Okay, we'll close this public hearing. Before requesting a motion on this ordinance, beginning with myself, each of the members is requested to indicate for the record both the names of persons and the substance of any ex parte communications regarding this application. An ex parte communication refers to any meeting or discussion with a person or citizen who may have an interest in this decision which occurred outside of the public hearing process. I think the only person I heard from was Valerie Britt, and I received several emails from her, which I believe are on file with the city clerk. Mr. Sutton?
Same emails from Valerie Britt.
Mr. Horn?
Same emails from Valerie Britt on file.
Mr. Mesa?
Same emails from Valerie Britt.
Mr. Wagner?
Emails from Valerie Britt.
Emails from Valerie Britt.
Emails from Valerie Britt.
Thank you. Is there a motion on this ordinance?
I move that we approve ordinance number 2024-8214 on the first reading to transmit the 2050 comprehensive plan to the state agencies for official review and schedule a second reading for a future date to be determined.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Before opening the floor for discussion or questions by the council, please be reminded that our decision will be based on the criteria set forth in the Land Development Code, staff's report, the recommendation of the Planning Commission, and the public input at all hearings. Any questions or comments from council? Mr. Mesa?
Yes, question. I have a question, page 12 on the language, which is 1.2.6 strategy.
I'm with you.
Okay. It's just more of a height limit concern with the local act. I'm just trying to, is there a potential of a developer coming in here and saying, hey, this is on your land use?
So the Live Local Act, and maybe the attorney can speak to that, it's very specific in the language about the height in the Live Local Act. And they just updated, I think, last year at the end where the language says allowed, the height allowed.
If I could also respond, yeah, the original bill passed in the 2023 legislative session did have geographical limitations on the height, so there are those limitations. The 2024 bill did pass the legislature, and I apologize, I don't know off the top of my head if the governor has signed it yet. Regardless, it almost certainly would not be in effect as of today's date, but I'm not familiar with the further updates specifically in the 2024 legislation because it's not law yet, but it's geographically limited, the existing law. So there are limitations to the height. It's tied to other heights within a certain radius, I believe.
Okay, thank you.
And I can pull that more specifically for you and get with you before the second hearing.
Mr. Wagner?
Yeah, I wanted to talk for a second and maybe put out a proposal for us to discuss. On section 10, starts on page 85, roughly page 87. One of the things, and this is the public school facility element component of the 25th plan. One of the things that I just personally feel in this section is that I believe there's an opportunity, just based on recent events, for us to enter in some language that may provide us with a little more equal footing in how we interact with the city of Jacksonville. I think right now there's a little, and by the way, I should have started with this. Fabulous work. It's great work. I really appreciate everything.
Thank you.
That
It's been a
being
long
said-
time.
Yeah,
It's been a long time.
and I'm sorry, please forgive me for that. It really is. But I think just in lieu of the recent activities kind of brings to light an opportunity for us to maybe put a little more teeth in here, a little bit of, maybe to kind of ensure that we're doing everything we can to preserve the quality of lives in our neighborhoods that surround our schools. And we all know that if that's not something that we advance and kind of drive towards, there's the potential for other folks with other agendas to interrupt that. There's probably 100 places to insert it into this section, something along those lines. I personally was looking at strategy PS 1.2.2 under A, section 2, where it says coordinate the city's development and redevelopment objectives. Maybe we could tag on to the end of that, assuring that we preserve the quality of lives, or the quality of our neighborhoods that surround the school district, or the individual schools, or something along those lines.
Individual schools.
So we're declaring that is part of what's important to us, and it's part of what's important for our 2050 vision.
Yep. We can.
By the way, you guys know this much better than I do. You have much greater expertise than I do on this, so I'm not trying to if you have a better recommendation, I'm more than open to that, but we'd really like to see us consider a change like that.
I mean, yeah, for sure. And that could be part of your motion, is if that's what you choose.
Are you making a motion to amend?
I am.
Can you state the motion?
The motion is to modify strategy PS section 1.2.2, section A, section 2, to include, after the words objectives, coordinate with, in the total sense would be coordinate with the city development, redevelopment objectives, and ensure the preservation of surrounding neighborhoods consistent with our 2050 plan. Second.
We have a motion and a second. Does that wording work for staff? Any discussion on the proposed amendment? Ms. Bowling?
Could you clarify for me, because you said preserve the surrounding neighborhoods? So it's not focused on preserving the schools, but
Right.
I guess what's your?
So my fear is that the surrounding neighborhoods, if we were to remove that school infrastructure, would, and we've heard a lot of feedback to this and a lot of concern around the value of the homes in those communities, the attractiveness to live in those communities, et cetera. So if we don't have that kind of centralized hub, which we describe as the schools are in those communities, and that's missing, then what we anticipate is the degradation of those surrounding areas to some degree. They're less attractive. They're going to have, there's the potential for them to have a large vacant or charter school building in the middle of their neighborhoods. It doesn't support a high quality, vibrant neighborhood that we've all talked about.
So, question for you guys, I mean, what does that look like as far as like, what would we even be doing with that language? I mean, what would that guide us? How would that guide us? Or how do you see that as guiding us?
Our Stephanopoulos is in the way.
Yeah,
Please.
before staff weighs in, just taking a quick look at A1, it's very specific to allowing for future expansions to accommodate future enrollment. Maybe there needs to be a very specific sub-element which discusses city council consideration of support or recommending denial based on future proposed closures by DCPS. So in other words, you've got a bullet that's specific to expansion, you should probably have a bullet that is specific to proposed closures by DCPS and the impacts to the surrounding neighborhoods that it affects. That would be my suggestion, is keep it as a discrete line item.
Sort of caution, we don't overstep, because it is a school board in our language.
Correct. I think it might be along the lines of consider the impacts before either supporting or objecting to the closure of the school based on the impacts to surrounding development.
Yeah. Okay. Got it. So maybe that's standalone under I is maybe a new, or two, I mean, excuse me.
Just because they're closing doesn't mean we have to support that in any way.
Yes. And we'll be clear that if we're talking about support, council supporting it or denying it, not school board.
Mr. Jansen?
Yeah, so I'm a huge proponent of keeping our local schools right where they're at. I'm going to fight tooth and nail for that. However, to our city manager's point, just for the record, the district, the school board, the schooling district they trump our comprehensive plan when it comes to this type of language. Am I understanding that correctly? Just for the record.
Yeah, my understanding is that the DCPS will make final decisions. This council has no bearing on the decision they make other than from a political persuasion perspective. So obviously, if the city council speaks in unison that they think it's a bad idea, that will be the recommendation that you're giving to them, but the final decision relies with DCPS.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, so I do support that language. Something along those lines. I'd like to see something before we go to a second reading as to what that looks like. Once again, kind of piggybacking, I sit on the Duval County Public Schools Sales Surtax Oversight Committee. And so if there's going to be language in there, I'd like to see at least what it looks like before the next meeting, which we have on the 22nd of May. So there's going to be some accountability for the school board in that regard. But I understand also that they kind of trump us in our comprehensive plan. Thank you.
Can you speak to the process? Once we approve tonight, it goes to the state?
Correct. Yes, for previous comp plan amendments, we've done the transmittal via resolution, which is unusual. Most communities will do an ordinance. The first reading is for transmittal, goes to the state, they do what they do, and then it comes back. Second reading would be the adoption. We obviously fully support all of these proposed changes. I would prefer to have them as standalone strategies, just so that they are, instead of buried in something else, I would prefer to have them standalone because I just feel like they're stronger that way. And I think we're looking at two separate things. One, preserving the neighborhood character surrounding neighborhood schools, and then the one about council being more involved. So, Blair and I are both taking notes on what that language would exactly look like, but I think we both understand the intent that council is getting at, and I feel confident that we can craft something that you guys will be happy with that will, reflect your concerns.
So, but in terms of timing, we would need to do that before we send it to the state.
Yes, we would have to basically put that in writing. It would be part of this package that would then go to the state, and then it would come back as part of the adoption ordinance at second reading, which is not, we don't have that scheduled yet. All depends on how long it takes to review, how many comments they have, if any, if there's changes they want us to make. So hopefully it's not a super long process, but there will be some lag between this hearing and the second one. Unless you guys wanted to delay this for the next council reading, let us come up with some language. If you are more comfortable seeing it before we send it, that's fine with me. Yeah, we understand the intent, so I feel confident we can craft something and send it. We can let y'all know what that is, but we understand where the intent is going here, so it's up to you guys, obviously.
Ms. Golding?
I would prefer to see the language before we send it to the state, to be honest with you. So maybe we move forward with Mr. Wagner's amendment, but then, I mean, is that appropriate? Is that appropriate process? And then we defer the final decision to the next meeting?
Yes, either way is fine, however the board wants to proceed. You could vote on the amendment, which would change the main motion, and then choose to continue the now amended main motion to a subsequent meeting. So,
Okay.
But either way is fine. That way does sound the cleaner way to do it, but it's not the only way to do it.
Okay, thank you.
Mr. Jansen?
I concur with Councilmember Golding. I think this is an important issue, especially with the rise and concern that's coming down, what appears to be coming down the pipe. So I too would like to at least get some eyes on this language before it's sent over to the state. So I support, as our attorney said, the cleanest way of getting that done.
There is still an amendment on the table, so we need to deal with that, but the amendment on the table specifically adds language to PS 1.2.2, which is not what we're talking about doing at this point.
Can I withdraw that?
Yes, any objection to Mr. Wagner withdrawing his amendment?
I move that we continue this meeting to the next city council meeting to give planning opportunity to make modifications as recommended or as requested for the PS, the public school development.
Can I ask you to hold off on making that motion? Sorry.
Does anyone have any questions or concerns about the rest?
That's what I was going to say. Let's do this one item at a time. Here are all the questions and comments. Give her another 30 years. I like where you're going. We're almost done. You're ready to go. As you were saying it, I'm like, oh, this is probably too soon. So we were on the same page, but I changed my mind midway. Any other questions or concerns from council? Mr. Mesa.
It's a lot of material, but I'm glad we're doing this. I know you guys are putting in a lot of work, so. It's a lot of material trying to go over, and some it's very self-explanatory. But I do have a question, and Heather, I know you know how I feel about the ADUs. So my question is on strategy FOU 1.4.1 on page 14. It says, on lots with a single-family residential home with a multifamily zoning designation, the city shall update the LDC to allow accessory dwelling units. ADUs shall be subject to the conditions specified in the LDC. On the LDC, is it matching? I mean, are we?
We're gonna work on that.
Okay.
That's on my desk.
Okay. My concerns is, you throw my concerns on it, so I just want to make sure. Okay.
Yeah, we will have actually specific ADU language, the requirements, and they have to meet those requirements before they're allowed to have the ADU.
Okay, it's just a lot of stuff
And
going on.
you will have a chance to comment on all those criteria.
Okay, I think yes. I'm gonna wait until the other stuff on the LBC for this question. Okay.
Any other questions and comments on this item? Ms. Golding, I will turn to you for a motion. If you could specify that you would like to continue this item to a specific date, time, and place, please.
I move that we continue this item to the city council meeting on May 22nd.
Second.
It's not May 22nd.
Oh, is it the 20th? 20th, I'm sorry.
Okay, we have a motion. I heard 4 or 5 seconds. Can we have 1 second?
Second.
We have a second from Mr. Jansen. Any comments on this item, on this amendment? No, this is a motion. What time is it? Madam Clerk, roll call.
Councilmember Meza?
Yes.
Councilmember Sutton?
Yes.
Councilmember Wagner?
Yes.
Councilmember Golding?
Yes.
Councilmember Horn?
Yes.
Councilmember Jansen?
Yes.
Mayor Hoffman?
Yes, motion carries. This might be a good time to mention that I will not be at the May 20th meeting. I'm going to be representing the city at the American Flood Coalition Conference. So, good luck with all this. Vice Mayor Golding. This will be a good one for you to sit at the control board here. Okay, moving on to item D. Let's see where we are. Okay, I don't have a packet for this one. We'll go ahead and let you give your report, Fire Marshal Shadow.
Steve Shadow, Jacksonville Beach Fire Marshal. The state of Florida adopts the Florida Fire Prevention Code as a minimum code requirement for municipalities and counties to enforce. Every 3 years it's updated. It's gone through its review cycle and its updated cycle. The new version, the 8th edition, is out, and we are required to update it and enforce in our code, enforce it as a minimum. And so in our life safety code, chapter 10, we need to update the version there to the 8th edition. The major changes that have occurred in here, they go up and down every year. Bars, restaurants, assembly type properties, they all have any new ones will have to have fire sprinkler system with occupant limits of 100 or more. The code is addressing lithium-ion batteries or energy storage systems and how those are stored inside of commercial structures, and it also deals with the photovoltaic. There are many other little changes in there, but those are major changes inside the code.
Thank you. Madam Clerk, will you read the ordinance by title, please?
An ordinance of the City of Jacksonville Beach, Florida, amending City Code of Ordinances, Chapter 10, Article 3, Section 10-3.03, Codes Adopted, providing for adoption of recitals and legislative findings, repeal of conflicting ordinances, severability, scrivener's errors, codification, and an effective date.
Thank you. This ordinance is before the council for a public hearing and consideration on its first reading. I will now open the public hearing on ordinance number 2024-8215. I do not have any speaker cards on this item. Would any member of the public wish to address this item for or against? Seeing none, the public hearing is closed. May I have a motion?
I move that we approve ordinance number 2024-8215 on the first reading, amending Chapter 10, Fire and Life Safety, Article 3, Fire Prevention and Life Safety, Section 10-3.03, Codes Adopted, and schedule a second reading for May 20th, 2024.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion by council? Seeing none, Madam Clerk, roll call.
Councilmember Sutton?
Yes.
Councilmember Wagner?
Yes.
Councilmember Golding?
Yes.
Councilmember Horn?
Yes.
Councilmember Jansen?
Yes.
Councilmember Meza?
Yes.
Mayor Hoffman?
Yes, motion carries. Our final ordinance of the night. Mr. Biggett.
Yes. Mayor and Council, as you'll recall, at the April 8th council briefing, we discussed proposed ballot initiatives. And at that point, we discovered that one of the questions was what I would call compound. So I brought this language back to you, and in the interest of time, that due to the deadline for the supervisor of elections to have the information prior to the November election, I scheduled it for a first hearing without the benefit of having another briefing to discuss it in depth. But nonetheless, I think everyone's on the same page here for a valid discussion. The updated ballot language included in Exhibit 1 to the ordinance now has 3 proposed questions instead of 2. As I mentioned, this is necessary to attempt to correct the existing conflicting language regarding what happens if a vacancy occurs in the office of the mayor. That question now asks the voters to delete the conflicting language to make it clear that the mayor pro tem shall act as mayor in the event of a vacancy. Also of note, language for question 1, I've revised, but of course it's up for you all to decide. I've no pride of ownership if you all want to change that language, but that's the one that regards gender and pronoun references. We're a little bit limited in that state law limits the ballot title to 15 words, so there's not much we could convey in that title with staying in compliance with the statute. The ballot summary, which is the portion immediately above the lines to check yes or no, does allow 75 words, so more details provided there. I'd be happy to answer any questions you all have about the proposed changes. If we schedule this for a second hearing, May 20th, we will be able to meet the supervisor of elections deadline to get whatever this board decides to put on the ballot. So with that, I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Thank you, Mr. Biggett. Madam Clerk, will you read the ordinance by title, please?
An ordinance of the City of Jacksonville Beach, Florida, submitting to the electors of Jacksonville Beach proposed amendments to the charter of the City of Jacksonville Beach, providing ballot titles, summaries, and text for the proposed amendments, providing directions to the city clerk, providing for severability, providing for an effective date for approved amendments, providing for an effective date for the ordinance.
This ordinance is before the council for a public hearing and consideration on its first reading. I will now open the public Public hearing on ordinance number 2024-8216. We do have several comment cards on this issue. We'll start with Georgette Dumont.
Hello again. Georgia Dumont, 507 16th Avenue South, Jackson Beach, Florida, 32250. I was on the council when we went through the charter review and when we updated all of this to begin with. And there was discussion as to moving it from just filling the position to up to the next general election, to give the residents the choice to select who is going to be representing them. The goal shouldn't be to make it easier for whomever gets appointed. The goal should be to be able to provide the best voice for the people who live in Jacksonville Beach to decide who should be representing them. So I would ask that you do not put the amendment on the ballot that asks to fill vacancies, appointees to vacancies shall serve for the remainder of the term, that it should shall serve until the next general election. Again, it gives the people who vote the right to say who is going to be representing them in their interests. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Dumont. Daryl Shields.
My name is Daryl Shields, 315 18th Street North, Jacksonville Beach. Let me begin by stating that I am in favor of keeping the current procedure for filling vacancies on the council. Section 23 of the city charter specifies that an appointed council member can fill the vacancy until the next election, not for the remainder of the term. The election of council members better serves the citizens than when appointed for the rest of the term in several ways. It gives the citizens a chance to know the council member and ask questions about his or her reason for running. Does he or she have an agenda that they wish to pursue, and why? Is the candidate aware of the issues that the council is facing or will be facing in the near future? The residents feel about the and how the residents feel about the issues. Are there competing views on the issue, and what are they? The election process is very important for the candidates to also hear from the citizens. I have attended council meetings for many years and remember several councils make proposals that the citizenry did not want or approved. The election process, with all the time requirements and just plain hard work, can help to ensure that our leaders and the electorate are in sync. For these reasons, I want our city leaders to be elected, not appointed. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Shields. We have one card from Robin Malcolm, who does not wish to speak but opposes ordinance E. Bradley Lewis.
Good evening, Bradley Lewis, 18 Hobson Road, Jacksonville Beach, Florida. Let's just take a second and think back. It was about a year ago that the council put forward an item to vote on and the citizens defeated it by 82%. 82% of the voters decided that what the council had come up with for a good idea was not what they wanted to see in their city. Those 82% disagreed with the council's ideas, yet the council was elected to make decisions. But it's clear voters that elected can disagree with the current council's decision. That's why it's important to always give it to the voters to decide who's going to be in there. As little as 4 councilors should not appoint the voice of the people for the short, or let me restate, as little as 4 councilors should only appoint the voice of the people for the shortest time possible. I've heard this particular council opine about the state of Florida interfering with its local home rule. As a voter, I take this as the same way. Please don't interfere with our choice to elect people to represent us. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Lewis. Rhonda McDonald.
Randall Stanky McDonald, 1120 2nd Avenue North, Jacksonville Beach, 32250. I just have some quick comments. I had the pleasure of being before you all earlier this year for said vacancy, and congratulations, Mr. Wagner and Councilman Magner. You've been doing a wonderful job. The person who receives, under the current situation, as the council reviews applicants of residents who are willing to serve, whoever receives that seat, they immediately have an opportunity to serve without the work of a campaign, which is a great benefit. You get to step into the job. And then you get to enter the next race if you choose to run again as an incumbent. With a tiny bit, maybe in this case, of a tiny bit of a track record, but it could be longer. Sometimes it could be almost 2 years. The proposed change absolutely removes the public's right to elect its representatives, which we all know is a basic underpinning of democracy. So, I hope that you will eliminate this and that we don't have to do the whole charter amendment thing and try to explain to people the subtleties of this. I would love to not have to do another campaign and defeat it at the ballot. It's exhausting. It exhausts the citizens who could be doing better things to build the city. I also think that there is a tiny bit of a miss on something else that should be resolved, and the mayor and I talked about this during the interview process. No one has defined whether or not term limits apply, and so personally, I would suggest if someone is kind enough to step into a vacancy, that it should just be waived, that time they filled until the next general election should not count against them as term limits. And then from then on, whenever they are actually elected, only those years count for term limits in our city. But that isn't even addressed in this, and to me that's a very serious point also. I hope that you will say right now, this is not ready for a ballot. Thank you.
Thank you. Bruce Wouters? I'm sorry if I pronounced that wrong.
Thank you, Honorable Mayor. It's Wouters, it's Dutch, a little problematic. But anyway, good evening to this honorable body. It's a pleasure to be here tonight. Thank you for your attention and hard work. This seems to disenfranchise the people who live here. I'm sorry. Bruce Flowers, 126 12th Avenue South, Jackson Beach, Florida. I've been here a long time. I think the one gentleman kind of touched on the point. I mean, you guys have a lot of ideas and a lot of things you want to bring forward, and maybe sometimes they're not a great idea. And I think this might be one of them. I respectfully request that you don't move forward on this. Thank you. It's been a long time.
Thank you. That is it for public comment cards. Would anyone else in the audience like to speak in favor or against this ordinance? Okay, we will close the public hearing and request a motion.
I move that we approve ordinance number 2024-8216 on the first reading, submitting to the electors of the City of Jacksonville Beach proposed amendments to the City of Jacksonville Beach Charter, and schedule a second reading for May 20th, 2024.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Discussion by council. Ms. Golden.
Everybody knows how I feel about question number 2, so I just want to put this information out there for the discussion. First of all, I want to point out the fact that this council of 7 currently has 2 appointed council members on it. So we have 2 people who have not been elected by our voters. Never thought that that would happen, but that's something that has happened. I look back and I only know of 1 council appointment prior to us having to deal with 2 appointments, and that was when Pete Middleman stepped down, and Dick Matthews, I think, was appointed to the seat. So this doesn't happen a lot, but when it does, it's important. And I think my feeling, as I've said over and over again, is we should all want our council members to be elected by the voters. I don't support putting question 2 on the ballot. As I mentioned in a briefing, I've done some research, looked at other municipal charters, and in looking at the communities around us, I didn't find any community that's immediately, that's near us, that appoints somebody for the remainder of the term. Neptune Beach, Atlantic Beach, Fernandina Beach, St. Augustine Beach, Flagler Beach, Orange Park. Jacksonville actually, they require a special election if there's a vacancy. So they take it straight to the voters as soon as they can. And there's other cities that do that as well. So I just believe that this is not the right direction for us to go in, and I will be making a motion to remove it, but I'm willing to allow further discussion before I make a motion.
I think we technically have 3, right? Because Mr. Horn won without opposition.
I'm an elected official.
I mean, technically. Mr. Horn, speaking of, go ahead.
Yeah, thank you very much. I actually did go through the election cycle, but I will point out that not even my wife or my kids voted for me. So. Nobody voted for me. I ran unopposed. My thoughts about this are, yes, I am a huge proponent of allowing the citizens to make their choice. I can see both sides of this in that in this election cycle, we have all the district seats, we have all the district seats, the mayor's seat. Oh, sorry, not the district, the at-large seats, the mayor's seat, and the district seat coming up. So conceptually, come November, myself and Councilperson Golden could be the senior members on this dais. That's scary. I'm joking around. That's, one of the things with keeping some of that institutional knowledge around for a period of time. That is something that kind of strikes in my heart. But then the other end of that coin is, if one of these council members was to turn around tonight and resign and say, that's it, can't have enough, and we do not have, or we push that the idea is for it's only going to be through elections, do we need to have a special election, which then costs the citizens money? Because again, the idea is that, well, wait a minute, the council is going to appoint somebody, well, somebody might not want the person being appointed. So again, this pendulum can swing both directions. I can see both sides of the coin. I can see both sides of the coin. We're commenting on all aspects of this amendment currently? Okay. The only other thing, I sent these comments to, this is on, shoot, I put my glasses back on. The gender references, the only thing I mentioned, I said this to David when we were asked for any, when this originally came out and there was comment in regards to our opinion, I would, page 1, hang on, I'll find we took out the presumably due to poor wording. Did that not make it in there, David, or was that just for us when we sent that as an email? What I sent you previously? Page,
If I may, what you sent me hasn't been added, but it's
okay,
certainly
so
something that can be discussed tonight.
Several proposed amendments. So the second paragraph on page 1, I would recommend removing presumably due to the poor wording of explanation. I think that's a little, I think that statement is unnecessary for the purposes of this ballot, or of this ordinance. And on page 4, in regards to the actual wording where it says, pronoun references. So again, specifically, kind of nerding out here, but you remove gender references because technically councilman or councilwoman is actually a noun. I mean, I would just remove the word pronoun and just reduce it to gender references. The idea, and then of course the concept of pronoun discussion in certain areas this time was probably part of the problem that got us in trouble last time. That and the fact that there were 16 different things that people were voting on. So those are my only thoughts there. Just throw that out there. Those are my observations. Thank you.
Can you hold tight on those as possible amendments after we get through this first round of discussion? Mr. Wagner.
Thank you. So, by the way, thank you all for the comment. Dang it! Thank you all for your comments. We really appreciate everybody coming and being prepared. You know, I also personally very strongly believe in the right to protect the vote, right? And so that is very important, and it's part of this process. And so taking that and understanding that and the whole, and the way that it impacts the whole continuity of how we manage the city is very important. My second kind of point, and I feel I need to point this out because people kept acting like this impacts me. This in no way impacts me. I am running for office. We're going to vote on this when we vote for everybody else. So there's nothing, no benefit or gain to me on this. But going forward, if we don't change it, there will be winners and losers. Right now, there are different appointed council people are being treated differently. So what we need to do is create a fair and consistent way that all people are treated, right? That really should be part of what our government does, is make sure people are treated equal and fair, or consistent and fair. And then lastly, the piece I'll bring up for consideration is, and this is new to me, and for those, probably for everybody out there except for Georgette, this is a very different type of role for people, and the amount of institutional knowledge that's required to be successful. I'll tell you, in my short 4 months, I have so much respect and admiration for everybody else that sits up here and the institutional knowledge that they have. And so making sure that we have a consistent and balanced with an equal amount of new blood and an equal amount of institutional knowledge so that we really get a solid and fair representation. Because as you see, we don't all agree on every topic, but everybody's bringing different backgrounds and knowledge. So wherever we end up on this, it needs to make sure that it's consistent with that. And I would also want us to consider the continuity between the second and the third. So there's no boundaries on replacing the mayor as well in the way it's written. So in theory, we could say that a counselor could not replace another counselor except for until the next election, but the vice mayor could. So whatever we do on one of these, we need to do on both to make sure that they are consistent. So just going to put that out there as we think through these.
Thank you, Mr. Wagner. Mr. Mesa?
Just to piggyback on Mr. Wagner and Mr. Horn, I'll start out with the gender, Mr. Madam Mayor. I know it's a joke. I agree, so I will, if Mr. Horn makes an amendment to removing the pronoun, I will support it. It's just the world we live in nowadays. So now moving on to question number 2 and question number 3. I've been pondering a lot on question number 2 since it was brought up, because I'm a big proponent of people should be doing the speaking, doing the voting. If we remove question number 2, which we should do question number 3 as well, what's the difference between a council member having to run for office right off the bat, but then the mayor pro tem that has to fill in the remainder of the seat? So if we have, God forbid, something happens to the mayor, and God forbid something happens to another colleague, we appoint the council member, they have to run for re-election again, which would be in 2 years, but the mayor pro tem gets to stay in office for the remainder of the year. So I think in order to be fair, we should remove both. I guess we could say this amendment until later, or after everyone has discussed this.
Mr. Jansen?
My approach is from a higher level, 35,000 feet. If you want to go back and dissect all the nuances of this particular charter referendum, talking about the vacancies, go back and listen to the briefing where we kind of talk about all the issues that are at hand, not just a couple that were brought up tonight. So for me, when you have something that could be construed or seen as controversial, what do? You send it to the voters. And if they overwhelmingly deny it, then that's what they do. That's their right. Just like the example he gave with the height. If it's 82% don't want this, then they will vote that. That's what we give the people. They have the right to vote, so we have to put that out there for them. That's my position on it. It's not our decision, it's your decision.
Ms. Golding?
A few things have been brought up that I wanted to address. The comment about 5 seats being on the ballot and how that could potentially change the council. Well, that's the voters' choice. If the voters want to change the council, that's their option to do that. The vice mayor filling the vacancy, I initially thought the same thing that you guys did, but here's the difference. The vice mayor is not somebody that was appointed. The vice mayor was elected. And so the vice mayor is an elected person that would just be filling the seat. So it's a little different, I think, than appointing someone who was not elected by the public, by the voters. And then I would also say that, I haven't had anybody come to me and say, this is something that needs to change. So I'm not sure why this needs to be brought to the voters. I think that what we have in the charter, it's been in the charter for a long time, and it's how we've been doing it for a long time. It's just that this happens to be the one year where we've had 2, or the one term where we've had 2 appointments. So I do not support changing this. I don't think it needs to be changed. Nobody's asking for it to be changed, other than some people on the council maybe think it needs to change.
Mr. Horn?
I was just going to comment, note of clarification. The only reason I brought up the 5 members is because of the fact that we do have off-cycle elections, so that we do not have a full turnover of the council. If we did this every 4 years and we had 7 new people, we would have a significant struggle. So again, that's the only reason I mentioned that. That's why I brought that up.
Mr. Jansen?
You made mention that the vice mayor is an elected official. Well, if we chose Mr. Wagner to be the vice mayor, then he wasn't elected by the people. So in this case, it does seem that way, that the vice mayor is an elected person, but the vice mayor is chosen by the dais and the council. So I don't know that theory fits. I forget your other comment that you made. That's it.
I'll comment on the 16 amendments that we have on the last ballot. Most of them, none of us asked us to change. No one noticed that it only said he in the mayor section, and that joke never gets old. Thank you, Mr. Meza. So I think that our job is we have to look at the charter from kind of both sides, from the operation of the city and the continuity of the leadership, as well as to the citizens, but we're the ones that are dissecting it and going through it and making the determinations of what we want to send to the voters for their consideration. So nobody asked us to do, I mean, the 2 that failed are, the voters said I can send the sheriff to go pick up council members. So, there's opportunities here for the voter consideration and decision on this, but that are not necessarily prompted by the voters themselves, and that's why we did that comprehensive charter review. Ms. Golden?
So I would like to make a motion to amend this ordinance by removing question number 2.
Second.
We have a motion and a second to remove question 2 from the ordinance. Is there any discussion on the amendment to remove question 2? Madam Clerk, roll call.
Councilmember Golding,
Yes?
Councilmember Horn,
Yes.
Councilmember Jansen,
No.
Councilmember Meza,
No.
Councilmember Sutton,
Yes.
Councilmember Wagner,
No.
Mayor Hoffman.
Yes. Amendment passes. Question 2 will be removed. Mr. Mesa.
I would like to make a motion, remove question number 3.
We have a motion to amend. Do we have a second? Seeing none, amendment fails. Back to the original question. Is there any discussion on the remaining? Yes, Mr. Horn.
I would like to make a motion that we remove on page 1, paragraph 2, the words at the end of that paragraph, presumably due to poor wording of explanation. And then on page...
Mr. Horn, just a moment. The city attorney has a...
Point of just legal order.
Okay.
That language is only on the agenda cover sheet. It's not part of the ordinance. When I do another cover sheet for the next meeting, I'll exclude that language. It has
Okay.
nothing to do with the ordinance. So
Okay, so
I see exactly what you're saying.
Okay.
I
So
think
then-
it doesn't need council action.
Okay.
I think it's an excellent
Thank you.
idea, and I'll remove it.
Then my amended request would be to remove the words on page, what page is this? 4 of 13. I was just going to remove the word in the explanation in between gender and references, the word pronoun, as well as in the ballot proposal, the word pronoun, and we can switch that to gender, and then in the paragraph below, remove the word pronoun and just leave those as gender references, as some of the words that we're looking at may not be actual pronouns. Sorry, my mom was an English teacher, and there are differences between certain words, so that's my amendment.
Mr. Horn, I'm going to ask you just to restate that as concisely as possible in the form of I move to amend.
Sorry about that.
No, that's okay.
I move to amend question 1, section A, to remove pronoun between gender and references. Section B, to remove pronoun and insert gender in its place. And the paragraph below in section B, to remove to remove pronoun in between gender and references.
Second. We have a motion and a second. Any discussion on this proposed amendment? Madam Clerk, roll call.
Councilmember Jansen,
Yes.
Councilmember Meza,
Yes.
Councilmember Sutton,
Yes.
Councilmember Wagner,
Yes.
Councilmember Golding,
Yes?
Councilmember Horn,
This is the first for me, yes.
Mayor Hoffman.
Yes. Well, don't forget, you tried to amend the memo first, so.
I'm trying over here.
You got there. No, I actually think that was a really good, a good point, because we do have councilmen, councilwomen throughout the charter remaining as well, so hopefully we will get this one through this time. The amendment passes. Ms. Golding, back to the original question.
I was just gonna add, I looked through the charter and I think I saw a lot of he, hims, but I don't think I saw any she, hers. Did anybody? Yeah, I have an issue with that.
Point well taken. Thank you, Ms. Golding. Had been 30 years since we did a comprehensive review of this charter, so any other comments? Madam Clerk, roll call.
Councilmember Meza,
Yes.
Councilmember Sutton,
Yes.
Councilmember Wagner,
Yes.
Councilmember Golding,
Yes.
Councilmember Horn,
Yes.
Councilmember Jansen,
Yes.
Mayor Hoffman.
Yes, motion carries. That was a doozy, everyone. Thank you all for your patience. I think we had every department head here except for Public Works. I don't know how he got. Oh, our chief of police was not here either. He was off rounding up council members since the citizens said he could do it. Ms. Golding, and a motion.
Yeah.
Can I ask a question for clarification.
Yes.
So will the numbers be changed for these? It'll be question 1 and 2 now, since question 2 was removed, or will it be 1 and 3 still?
It'll be 1 and 2, because it hasn't been published,
Okay.
because of any other fashion.
I move that we adjourn.
Second.
We have a motion and a second, all in favor, signify by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed? I didn't think so. Meeting is adjourned, have a good night.
Got more rules?